Hello, hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Welcome back to Rose and Prose. Just finished up another episode of Bachelorette Tonight. Down to 9 guys after tonight. One self-eliminated. One went home. Where do you want to start tonight?
I think that we need to start where they started. We need to start by talking about Jen's ex.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that guy was. He was on there for like all of 2 minutes. It was very clear that she was not picking up what he was putting down. He just showed up. I think there was like an interview that I saw this week where someone was asking her what was that about, and I mean you could just tell from her tone that she was not about it. And they asked her, well, do you think that he just showed up to get a few minutes of fame? And she was like, yeah, I kind of do. Mm-hmm. So he was quickly set to the side, and I gotta say, it didn't make for good television. It did not make for good drama, but it was good reality, the reality side of the television, because I think that if my exes showed up, I would have the same feeling like, why are you talking to me? Go home, live your own life,
They did make some good TV out of it, I think, by having Jenn tell the guys that Matthew was in Auckland, and then, we see her talking to him, and I can't remember if she actually said, like, this isn't going to work, or if all we saw was him walking back in and saying, hey guys, my name is Matthew, like, I came down here on my own volition, and she told me, like, that her person's in the room.
If they had a conversation, I blinked and missed it.
I mean, so I feel like, okay, great news that Jenn told Matthew her person is in the room. Mm-hmm. But the guys have got to be freaking out, A, knowing this guy is here, and then B, seeing him walk in, thinking, oh gosh, what is he going to say now? Is he going to, he's joining us? Like, mm-hmm. I can't, they're always like, we've been in this. Like, why is someone allowed in now?
I felt like it kind of bonded the guys together in a way. Like, they weren't attacking one another as much this episode because they had a common enemy. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was interesting, but also it was nice to move past the, competition, this rivalry, this alpha male, this machismo, whatever you want to call it. It was nice just to move past it and see them develop themselves, which I think brings us to our next piece, where Jenn dives in and she goes out on a date with one of the guys, and he says...
Grant was her first one-on-one date, where they went in the helicopter, I think.
And Grant, at the end of the night, self-eliminates. Wasn't that who self-eliminated?
No, Austin self-eliminated.
Oh, okay.
On the group date. So Austin, with a little bit of the mullet mohawk action, self-eliminated on the group date where the guys had to go sheep herd. And yeah, so Austin basically said, Jenn, I like you, and I can tell that my relationship is not as far along as everyone else. And whether it was because of how the guys reacted when Matthew was there, or because he just saw it there, he knew that she liked other guys a lot more. And I don't know that it was necessarily that he didn't like her, but I do think he was like, I can tell that these other guys like her a lot more, and mm-hmm. that she likes these other guys a lot more too. But yes, him self-eliminating sent her down a bit of a spiral.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of took over the rest of the episode, where she is trying to articulate it at first, and then she progressively proceeds to open up and kind of mentally and emotionally process what's happening. And so she felt rejected by someone who it seems to us, I mean, we were talking about this during the episode, it seems to us that she wasn't really into him to begin with, but the fact that he rejected her mm-hmm. sent her on this spiral, which I I have been there. I think you've been there, where
Oh, yeah.
where you're rejected by someone who you didn't even like in the first place, which is somehow worse than if you're rejected by the person that you like.
It's like, wait, I am supposed to be the one to reject you.
You're dumping me?
Like, I was supposed to do that first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, like, that feeling is just like, wait, you beat me to this? But no, wait, take this back because I want to dump you.
Yeah. So she goes down a spiral, and I think that it opens up this conversation with all of the guys, but particularly with Jenn, about insecurities, and some of the guys start talking about, like, their own father issues. I think last week we were talking about daddy issues, and I said something to the effect of, like, it's not always daddy issues. Like, sometimes it's just this parent wound, regardless of where you got it from. It's that you are trying to become an adult, and an adult, however they manage to do it, they cause a wound in you that kind of you hold on to for the rest of your life. So the guys were processing their own stuff. And do you have any thoughts on that? Because I have a thought on it.
Well, I'm curious, like, what is it about why we can't handle rejection? And why we often want to do the rejecting? Is it a protecting ourselves? Or why do we not have the strength to, like, accept rejection without taking it really, really personally?
You have thoughts on that?
I'm kind of curious what you think.
For me, I think in situations where that has been the case, where someone has kind of beat me to it and I've been dumped before I dump them, or whatever language we want to use here, basically, they're beating me to the punch. I think that there is definitely, like, this power play, this mix-up of self-identity that I am the rejecter, not the rejected. And when that is kind of turned, it's unexpected. It comes out of nowhere because you've been writing this script. Mm-hmm. But also I think it's the fact that, like, you've already done the math in your head. This person is not a good person for you, maybe for someone else, maybe they're awful, wherever they fit in that equation. And so you've already kind of put them down under your own scale, and now they're rejecting you, which makes you feel worse because you're being rejected by a loser, or someone who's, in your head, you've already done the math, that the loser is saying that, no, wait, you are the loser. And that hurts. Yeah. Like, that really sucks.
Yeah, I think that there's, like, clearly Jenn has concern that, like, she's not enough. And I think that there is this desire to love and to be loved and to want and to be wanted. And oftentimes even more so to be wanted. And then when you're not, even if you weren't actually that invested in the relationship, it hurts. I mean, I know that, like, when I lived in New York many moons ago, I dated around, and some people I wasn't that interested in, but then when they rejected me, I felt like it was about me.
Yeah.
And even though I may not have liked that person that much, it felt like, oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. There's something I'm doing wrong. And so even though Jenn has 10 other guys in front of her, she feels like, oh, wait, this person doesn't want me. There's something wrong with me.
And I think for me, it's the flip side of that. You know, I think in trying to process relationships with myself, with my friends, reading articles online, there was this concept of our insecurities are really rooted in one of two places. We either think that we are too much or we are not enough. And so for me, it was very much, I am too much. Like, I bring too much honesty, I bring too much truth, I bring myself. And so I definitely, like, around 2010, 2011, began to feel like I had to edit myself. I mean, I remember in my own stuff, self-harming and repeating this mantra to myself that no one will love you if you are honest. No one will love you if you do this. No one will love you if you say these things. Because I just felt like it was too much. Like I brought too much to every relationship, not even romantic relationships, but in every interaction, I would have to consciously shut myself down and say, you shouldn't talk about that. You shouldn't share that. And so I think that it's interesting, you know, that you're saying in your own experience, the flip side of that is that you feel as though you are not enough. And I would say in my own experience, I feel like I'm too much. And I think that that is at the root of a lot of all of us, a lot of our insecurities. The unique face, the specific face, is different for each one of us. But I think there is some traction to that we either think that we are too much or we are not enough.
I know you're not looking for this, but because we're here, I want to make sure that you know that you are enough and that you are not too much.
Thanks.
And that I appreciate your honesty and I appreciate learning about your interests, even when I don't always understand them.
I am something of a nerd. So anyway, the guys are starting to open up and they're talking about their own father wounds, mother wounds, their insecurities. That comes up. And there definitely came a point tonight where I said out loud, I don't think that this is good. I don't think that this is healthy. Not because they were oversharing, but at some point in the oversharing, it becomes something of a trauma bond. That you're kind of laying all these bad things on the table and they're laying their bad things on the table and you're kind of bonding over the worst pieces of your life. And I don't...
Can you say more about that? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so one of the guys started talking about his relationship with his father and how his father had addictions. And Jenn is just sitting there kind of nodding, listening, and being a really good listener, being very open. I mean, she had already shared her own insecurities with all of the guys, had already processed that in front of the cameras. And so he's saying, you know, my father had this issue with addiction. It really messed up our relationship. It was very difficult for us. And I think that was the point where I said, you know, I don't know that this is actually healthy. Not because he was oversharing, but because at some point you're kind of putting out the worst things about yourself, all of your insecurities. And the other person is going, yeah. And so you're kind of like mingling in this dark corner, which really is not reflective of who they are. I mean, Jenn, by the end of the episode at least, bounces back. What we've seen of Jenn so far, she is not that person who is going to sit there and cry and kind of mourn all of these things. We've seen the previews of the back end. At the end of tonight's episode, we saw previews of the back end of the season. She definitely is going to bounce back. So for us to kind of see these people and trade and build a relationship off of the worst sides of ourselves and our traumas, I don't know that that's actually healthy because it's not honest. It's not the full story of who you are. It is deep. It is very meaningful, but it's not the whole story. And I think that there is something of a trauma bond there.
How do you balance it? Like when you've got 7-8 weeks max to fall in love with someone before you theoretically get engaged, like how do you balance getting them to like you, being vulnerable, and the trauma that we all have?
I think that if I were a friend, okay, and I were not on the show, but I was just talking to the people that were on the show, I would say, that's not who you are. Like, share the things that light you up. Share your nerdiness. Share the things that you freak out about. You know, one of the things that I tell my students, and I say this at the start of every semester, and I really have to spend weeks driving this home, is like, I am fully here for whatever you want to nerd out on. You want to geek out, tweak out on, I'm here for it. I want to see the things that bring you joy. I want to see the things that are meaningful to you. I want to see your passions. And yes, part of that are the experiences that have shaped you, but also like what lights you up, what brings you joy. If it is coloring in adult coloring books, baby, let's do that. Let's find out what that is. If it is planting things and raising a garden. Show me all of your spices. Like, let's go. Let's see those things. And I think that that is how you would balance it. And if I were a friend of any of the contestants, I think that that's what I would say is like, if you're going to share your worst side, then share the best side as well. And give yourself permission to geek out and freak out in front of this person, because at least if they reject you, gosh, I think that when I have done that, I don't even feel rejected. I just feel like, gosh, you don't even see the joy in this? Get out of here with that. I don't even feel bad when I share my best side, because what's wrong with you that you don't enjoy those things? They bring me light and they bring me joy.
I mean, speaking of bringing light and joy, I will only talk for myself, except I will say you are not necessarily someone who watches sports. But man, Simone Biles, Jordan Childs, they bring me so much joy right now.
Yeah, the Olympics this week. I don't know if y'all have been watching it, but people in my life who don't even watch sports know of the athletes this week. And I think that it's so lovely that the athletes, for me, I would say it's the women's gymnastics team, that there's just joy there. Every time I see them, I'm like, yes. And when Katie Ledecky had like a 17-second lead over the next swimmer in swimming, I was like, bruh, can you even imagine that? 17 seconds. You're in the Olympics and you have a 17-second lead over the next person. That's insane, man. It brings me a lot of joy.
I loved the gymnastics and seeing how much camaraderie and how much they supported each other,
Totally.
even women from other countries.
Even women from other countries.
I think the men of the Bachelorette could take a cue from the U.S. women's gymnastics team in supporting each other. Like when one comes home from their date with a rose, hey man, good job, congrats, how'd it feel? You know, they could take a cue from them. Just saying.
Have you lived that out in your own life?
Supported my coworkers, absolutely.
Your rivals?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, I wouldn't say I have rivals, but yeah.
Do you have enemies?
No, but...
You don't have enemies?
No.
She doesn't have enemies? You have to have at least one enemy.
No. But, like, in a competitive sport, I don't do a sport, but in wedding planning, no, I want everyone else to make their clients' dreams just as beautiful as they imagined it. And especially with my company, like watching everyone support each other and remaining willing and being each other's ally is really just like the greatest joy of working at Uncommon Chameleon.
Yeah. Well, how did the episode end?
No cocktail party. She knew what she was going to do. She didn't need to have conversations. Sorry, folks, I'm going to forget his name, but one guy went home, and they didn't really have a connection. So, I think when we get down into this, like... single digits.
Well, hang on. Well,
she's going to start building. Like, the real people are there.
Is that you say that they did not have a connection, and yet he was in the van at the end of the episode, and he was crying because he felt like they had a connection.
Yes, and the producers try to make them cry in those exit interviews.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that was just for the cameras?
I mean, should we talk about the rain for the cameras?
Oh my gosh. Totally staged. You could look in the background, the leaves weren't moving.
But I mean, I think when you get down into the single digits, that's when the people who were there, she has some form of a stronger connection with, although there were a lot of previews that showed she really starts to question things, and I think it gets harder because yes, they might have strong feelings of her, but if they can't say I'm falling for you towards the end, that's a big red flag when you're trying to be at the end to get engaged. So the preview claims, she says, in the final episode, I can't let you propose to me, but that she is holding a rose. So TBD what will happen down the line. But, looking forward to seeing what happens next week.
Any other thoughts?
I'm excited. I'm
All
ready
right.
to get to hometowns. Just a couple more weeks.
How far away is Hometowns?
I think it's probably 2 or 3 episodes away.
Speaking of hometowns, we are about to visit Lizzie's family home. And so there may be a change of scenery in the background for our next episode. We are having to pick up our gear and move to New York and Philadelphia.
Live from Cape Cod.
Yeah, Cape Cod as well. I don't know if I'll be on that episode, though. So we're looking forward to the next few weeks. And, yeah, see you next week.